The story began immediately with the main character Yuri, who refused to reincarnate until the goddess fulfilled his request. She did not expect to face such a dilemma. She recalled what had happened a few minutes ago. A year ago, some girl who called herself a goddess told him that he would die of illness and then be reborn in another world. Yuri was a middle-aged man who had been sick most of the last years. And now, when he died and became a spirit, that girl appeared out of nowhere and informed him that he was chosen for reincarnation. If he agreed, Yuri would also receive superpowers and skills needed for life in another world. The goddess was grateful. Nowadays it is easy to explain such things to young people. Then Yuri asked her if he would also be given abilities according to his wishes. She agreed and explained by example that if he wished for great strength, he would receive skills related to strength, and if he wished for a harem, skills of charm for that. Yuri, a middle-aged man constantly overloaded with office work, dreamed more than anything of a self-sufficient measured life, so he asked the goddess to give him skills in magic not for fighting, but for a pleasant, comfortable, slow life, and the goddess smiled and said that would be easy. She asked about his wishes but did not expect to immediately regret it because Yuri got confused and began asking for any skills that came to mind, adding them to those the goddess already had in mind, and when the skills exceeded 10, she doubted, but, making sure Yuri was not a bad person, she fulfilled his request and gave several additional abilities so he could survive in the new world. Thus began Yuri's second life. He happily started living a slow, relaxed life. But as soon as he found himself in another world, Yuri did not even have time to catch his breath and had to. He ran because a wild boar was chasing him, and he did not understand how boars could be so huge, as this animal looked like a truck. As if Truck-kun caught up with him to arrange reincarnation, Yuri thought his second life would end immediately after birth, and that it would be the worst joke in his 2 lives. So he needed to get to the abandoned village nearby, which the goddess had mentioned, and he remembered that he might have a necessary stealth skill. But he did not know how to use skills, so Yuri started running again because he would die in vain if he could not use it. He constantly tried to activate the skill, going through different words in his mind that might trigger it. Eventually he managed to activate the hiding skill, became invisible, and the boar no longer saw him. From him. Yuri slowly hid behind the bushes and felt relief that the monster had lost him. Now he had a chance to get out, and with a young body it should be easy if he safely avoids danger. Yuri was mentally broken after barely escaping a quick death thanks to strong health. Ahead he found a water source and looked at his reflection, which blended with the landscape due to camouflage and seemed invisible. Yuri remembered that in his world he had read several stories about reincarnation, so by them he could check his status. He tried to call up the status window and it opened like in a game. There he learned that his body was now 7 years old, meaning the goddess hastily subtracted 3 from 37, which was his age in the previous life. He checked which skills he had received and saw all the amazing abilities, such as appraisal, life magic, language proficiency, storage, hiding, and all elements of magic. Yuri was glad that he had made a good deal with the goddess and really received useful skills. He decided to test them when he reached the base. Since there was a threat of monsters here, and he could not waste time in the forest, he decided to move with camouflage mode on because it would help him avoid monsters. But Yuri was worried about what he would do if he encountered monsters again. He knew he could not hide forever, so he had to come up with a plan. He had no combat skills, so he was counting only on the machete from the goddess. If he did not figure out how to use it, he would die. Then his stomach growled. It reminded him that since his arrival he had eaten nothing, he only had nuts. And today he still needed to practice magic, prepare protection from monsters, find more food, and arrange a safe place to sleep. Yuri was a little worried because he did not consider this a slow life. He had too many tasks on the first day, but that did not change the fact that all this had to be done to survive. So he continued moving forward in search of a place. Eventually Yuri came across an abandoned village, which he had heard about from the goddess, and after a brief inspection found open lands for cultivation, no one to bother him, and several buildings where he could settle today, although they were somewhat neglected. Having said that, he decided to walk around and check the entire village while he was there. He remembered the basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter, so he decided that his current clothes were suitable for now, and regarding the house he came across a promising one with a well outside, and Yuri entered to check the condition of the hut and the damage inside. It turned out that the damages were minimal and easy to repair, after which he roughly imagined what kind of house and fences he wanted and where to place them, and the fields and the location of the house in the center of the village would make it easier for him to defend and further expand. Now he only had the problem of food left, and apparently for now he could only solve it by hunting. He inspected the village fields and fortunately found some wheat and potatoes. These plants seemed to have grown wild after the village was abandoned, and now all he had to do was mow the weeds and prepare the fields to cultivate and propagate them. But since this was another world, he wanted to make sure they were non-toxic and edible. So Yuri used his skill to evaluate them, and there learned about them, and it could also be cultivated. He looked around a bit and found some harvested wheat that seemed suitable for food but not for sowing, so this gave him. He decided to use this wheat to lure birds and catch them by the same methods he had learned in his previous life. Yuri went to look for birds, and when he found two, he threw some wheat nearby, and the birds seemed to really fly over. Now Yuri thought it would be easier to catch them with traps, but then he realized he could have simply used fire and wind magic to make the work easier. Suddenly he heard a voice warning him to be careful, and Yuri quickly looked around, but could not find where the voice was coming from, or that it warned him at that very moment. The same wild boar that was there before rushed at him, and Yuri did not expect the animal to follow his scent all the way to the village. When the boar lunged at him, Yuri barely dodged with a jump. Then he quickly activated camouflage to hide from him again. He was thinking of running away from this again, as before, but then he saw a wild boar that was wandering around and accidentally breaking houses while looking for him. And Yuri realized that if this creature was left like that, it would definitely destroy his house too. He needed to protect his home, but Yuri was not sure if he could stop that creature with the minimal power the goddess had given him for working on the farm. He immediately sees that the boar is dangerous for him in his current state, so he has no choice but to surrender and leave this village. But Yuri knows that this will not succeed, because in this unfamiliar world it is even more dangerous to move thoughtlessly, and there may be no safer places nearby than this village. Moreover, even if Yuri ran away, the boar would still chase him because it probably considers Yuri an intruder on its territory, so there is only one option left, to fight it here and now. His situation is almost the same as that boar's, because they both struggle for survival. Yuri always dreamed of living freely among nature, so he understands that he will have to face it, and decided to take full responsibility upon himself and solve it on his own. Refusing to simply give up, he does everything possible to overcome this obstacle on the way to his slow life. Yuri thought he could kill that wild boar on the first try using fire magic, showing his most powerful fire strength and advantage over all the surrounding monsters. But this could only happen in imagination, because he himself chose a slow life with simple needs and skills, and as soon as he thought about the fight, his body froze and he hid. Yuri looked at his stats and skills and realized that they barely reached the minimum, but it occurred to him that since these skills were given by God, they might be stronger than they seem, and other skills might turn out to be just as powerful as camouflage, because even that bear could not find him by scent while he was using it. This made him trust his strength. He felt strength within himself and tried to concentrate to summon fire magic. When he felt he could do it, Yuri used magic for the first time and tried to release a fireball at the wild boar. To his surprise, the fire magic released only a small spark that barely flew a few centimeters and fell to the ground. Yuri was surprised when he accidentally revealed his position. He could not believe that he trusted so much and thus gave himself away, because of which the boars found him and are going to trample him to death. Yuri got scared and panicked. He desperately began trying other magical skills, but this only made the boar angrier. It started chasing him more fiercely. Yuri wondered if there was some trick in using magic, so he used third-level earth magic and managed to create an earthen wall, thinking that this would definitely work against that creature. But the wild boar just broke through the wall and again put Yuri in a difficult situation. But Yuri calmed down when he saw that the boar was really stuck by its neck in the crack of the wall. This created a chance for a strike, and this time he decided to rely on a machete instead of magic. And from various videos about wild animals that he had watched in his previous life, he learned that the weak spot of any animal is the throat. Yuri focused his gaze on the boar's throat. He gathered the will to control his trembling hands, which had never killed anyone before. If he missed this time, he would die. Yuri wanted to survive at any cost, so he lunged and hit the wild boar's neck just as it was about to be freed from the wall. It was very close. Yuri finally managed to kill the boar thanks to his quick decisiveness, and now it seemed to him that it was much easier than he expected. Now he was racking his brains about what to do with this thing. Then he remembered reading a novel about how to process meat by drying the blood and cooling the body. But for that he would need a fairly large river, and he could not risk going into the forest yet. Just then the same voice as before asked him if everything was all right, but when he turned around he asked who it was and where it was. "I was," answered a voice there above his head. Yuri understood that the voice belonged to those birds, and they said that he was the first who could understand their words. Yuri clearly did not know what to say. Only later did he realize that thanks to his language skill he could talk to birds. He thought this ability would help him communicate with the people of this world, but it turned out that he could even talk to animals with it. And as for the wild boar, he could not come to an understanding with it, because the boar did not want to talk at all. Yuri decided that next time he would try to talk to them before hunting, but this might cause problems, because he needed to get them for meat. For now, the birds asked if he wanted to know where the river was, and when he nodded, they showed him the direction to the river, and said that it was very large, so this would help him. Yuri asked why they were helping him, and they replied that they wanted to thank him for the food that was before. Yuri understood that they just wanted to repay him for the wheat. And now he saw them off with a wave of his hand, and returned to work. He was very grateful that he had not attacked those birds. Since they said the river was nearby, he decided to move the body of the wild boar there. To move the heavy body, he decided to use the acquired storage skill, and when he touched the opening, it really was stored inside this, and he doesn't even have to worry that it will spoil. This is what he calls a cheating skill. And finally he begins to enjoy this other world. Yuri wants to go to the river, and on the way he used the skill of concealment to hide his presence for safety. After that, he finally reached the river, and with the help of water magic, washed the blood on the shore. Then he pulled out the organs and immersed them in the river water for cleansing. When he finished, he poured water over the body once again, and while it was cooling, he was very tired, so he just sat down and looked at his stats once more. He realized that he had spent almost half of his magical power without even noticing it, and that the numbers were initially only the minimum for the parameters, and the fact that he defeated that boar means that the boar was also a minimal threat in the forest, and beyond it there are much stronger monsters. And it turned out that Yuri's perception did not match reality because he could not know that his abilities were not minimal, but much more powerful, since even strong warriors of this world find it hard to defeat a wild boar. The fact that he used water magic to extract the blood was impressive, because water mages find it difficult to control liquids other than water, so his abilities can already be considered cheating, but he still needs time to understand this. And now he returned home with all the meat and cut it into pieces, preparing for cooking. With the help of earth magic, he made a temporary oven and lit a fire in it with fire magic. Then he put the meat directly over the fire so that it would cook slowly. Yuri was delighted when the meat was finally well cooked, because it was his first hearty meal since he was hospitalized in his previous life. As soon as he gets the meat, he can't wait to try it, so without delay, he immediately grabs a generous piece of meat and chews it thoroughly. Yuri completely immersed himself in the exquisite taste, that eventually he shouted exaggeratedly, and his voice was heard throughout the forest. He could not have asked for better cooked meat. Every piece was rich in flavor, and with a full stomach he felt his strength returning. He had not tasted anything so delicious for so long that he felt alive again, because since arriving here he had not felt this. But this meat, and all the effort to get it, were worth it. Having eaten his fill, Yuri no longer worried about food, and now only had to find a safe place to spend the night before nightfall. First of all, he drew a plan of his house, and marked where he would set traps to know exactly what to do. The next task was to build a wall. He did not know whether to dismantle uninhabitable houses and make fences from their wood, but that would take too much time and he had no tools or strength. He could try stacking stones like a castle wall, but that would also take too much time. So the last option was to rely on earth magic, although wild boars might manage to break through it as they did this time. He decided to try removing small stones to make it stronger, which required high precision that comes with practice. So Yuri began training in earth magic, first making several cups from soil. After several attempts and errors, he managed to make one item as hard as stone and in the perfect shape he wanted, and he realized that if with a cup he could achieve such a level of hardness, he had enough experience to try the same on earthen walls. He immediately set to work on the wall, and after testing the same method and level of precision, Yuri was able to build perfect walls for his boundaries. He left the dimensions of the wall sections unchanged, and made a fence around his house. At first he considered it his castle. Yuri realized that this place more resembled a prison with limited space. He didn't even manage to make a door in this fence. But what's done is done. So he would have to settle for anything just to rest tonight, because it was already getting dark. He had almost finished all the tasks for today, and the last task was to get drinking water. He couldn't believe that he had ultimately postponed it until last, but because of everything that happened, there was no other way out. He went to check the well he found during the village inspection, and fortunately it was covered with a lid. He tried to throw a small stone to. It was necessary to check inside, and by the sound it seemed there was water, so Yuri had to figure out how to pump it out. He decided to use water magic. He imagined water floating in space at the bottom, and this helped him control the water in the well, and he was able to pull it out without problems. He thought it might be dirty, but the water seemed quite clean thanks to whoever had previously closed the lid well. He checked the water to make sure it was drinkable, and still took precautions. Yuri planned to boil it before drinking. Later, he was glad that everything was finally done for today, although his first day in this world was quite chaotic. He did not clean up or prepare the bed, so today he made a temporary bed from leaves he gathered. He thought about how much more he still needed to do in the future. But this cheered him up a bit because he was finally free to do what he wanted. He was inspired to eagerly await what tomorrow would bring. But already the next morning he was not so happy, because his whole body ached from lying on the ground and it was cold, and those leaves were completely unsuitable as bedding or protection from the cold earth. So today he decided first of all to make a futon from wild boar hide. He could no longer ignore the need for a comfortable place to sleep, because it was literally the foundation of his slow life. He doubted whether a beginner like him could work with leather, so he checked the skill list and saw a unique skill called Guide to Rural Life. This skill turned out to be very useful because it provided all the knowledge for living in the village, and was one of the skills the goddess herself added as a bonus. He tried to find information that would help him tan the wild boar fur. As a result, he got exactly what he needed: knowledge of how to do it. Yuri immediately got to work and cleaned the dirt from the fur. Then he cut off the fat with a knife, and it was not as easy as it seemed. The next step was even harder. The fur had to be soaked in a tanning solution for 2 weeks, otherwise it would rot. And Yuri was worried because he did not have a ready solution and had to hurry, and making it was not easy because it required water, salt, and alum. He gave up on this and decided for now just to add more leaves to the bed and take care of other matters, and then he needed to clean and repair the house. For this, he drew a schematic plan of the house interior and began cleaning, getting rid of unnecessary things. He carefully inspected the kitchen, dining room, living room, and bedroom, and this gave him an idea of how peasants once lived here. He understands that they probably slept on some kind of bedding, but that is not enough for him because he is used to a bed. Yuri decided to make one of those homemade items with his magic. He continued working on the house floor using earth magic and made it resemble concrete so that it would be cool in summer. He arranged a traditional Japanese earthen floor in the hearth area. After that, he began to use earth magic more often, making dishes, cutlery, and other things. Yuri did not suspect it, but in the process, he gained a rare level of earth magic. After repairs and updates, he used wind magic to blow away the trash because he had no cleaning tools, although dust was everywhere. He was glad that at least the house was finally closed. Maybe tomorrow he will try to use candles made from animal fat. When dusk fell, he finished small tasks and went to sleep. Yuri cried because earlier he had not reviewed all his stats, as he did not know when. He already had drinking water, a flask, winter fur, and several potions for health and magic, as well as a letter. He did not expect to get fur so quickly after so much effort. Even more, he was impressed by the content of the letter addressed to him by God. She said that this world is called For and warned him not to tell anyone about his abilities and unique skills if he ever met the locals, and that was just one of the surprises, because the properties of the life magic he received turned out to be even stranger. It contains skills such as ignition, cleansing, and lightning. Yuri also did not know that he no longer needed to wipe manually. Because of cleansing, he wasted time in vain, although he needed to use it wisely. He thought he had changed little since his past life. Since then, he always played games without first reading instructions and hints. For some time, Yuri behaved cautiously, but now he realized that he had been a bit careless, and still had fried meat for breakfast. However, he had been eating simple fried meat for the 3rd day and was tired of the taste. So Yuri wished that God would also give him some spices if she could afford to give so many skills. He decided to inspect other abandoned houses to check if he could find salt left by the villagers. Then Yuri came across a map. Fortunately, it remained intact without signs of weathering. The map was easy for him to read. There was a place marked with a cross that worried him a little because it could be dangerous or a resource, so he decided to go and check it himself. When Yuri was walking through the forest with the map in his hands, he moved more smoothly than before. Yuri hoped to accidentally come across some treasure, but not because he wanted to get rich, but he wanted to check it out and see what could be there. Eventually, Yuri came across a patch without a path. There were no tall trees here, so perhaps this was once a road. He was afraid that unknown poisonous plants or large insects might be in the thickets and decided to check later, because it didn't look safe now. But then Yuri remembered that he had magic, so there was no need to think like before, because he was different now. He used the wind to mow the overgrown grass, and everything went smoother than expected. Yuri was glad it didn't take much time. He moved forward, checking for poisonous plants, and came across several edible ones that could be useful for cooking. It seems there are even more types of useful plants here. Yuri later noticed yams, which when used properly in cooking can be very useful and more valuable than gold and silver. Of course, yams need more than 10 years to be harvested, and they are hard to dig up because the roots stretch deep and break easily. But since he now had earth magic, digging them up was very easy. However, Yuri did not expect the yam to look so strange, as if it were a cookie doll. He wonders if this is really the same sweet potato he thinks it is. He was afraid it might be a monster, but it seems it is not. He thought that in this world it just looks different. But Yuri suddenly felt somehow strange. As if something dangerous was approaching, he sensed danger and immediately wanted to leave. But he was suddenly attacked out of nowhere, and he barely managed to avoid it. Yuri didn't even see this attack, and if he hadn't sensed it in time, he would have died. He thought it might be an attack by a monster or locals, but then he felt something else. And it turned out that right behind him was a mantis. It could also become invisible, and Yuri got scared because it could be dangerous. So at first he tried to communicate with this monster as with birds. He asked the monster to pretend that it had never been here, but the mantis didn't even listen and attacked him again. Yuri managed to dodge because this time he saw the attack, but that just means he will have to fight that creature. The mantis became invisible again, and one of its parts could kill him. He sharpened his senses and he managed to dodge another attack, so he realized that he might have the perception skill, and his assumption turned out to be correct. Because his perception skill was passive and constantly active, so he felt any movements around him. Yuri actively trained the perception skill until he began to sense mantis. Fortunately, it seemed that he could not erase his presence. Yuri prepared to counterattack with water magic, with which he had recently learned to create water from air. He used water magic and created a large water bubble, which he covered the mantis with, causing it to painfully suffocate from lack of oxygen. Yuri did not want to kill that creature in vain, so he decided to use the mantis's tentacles as a sickle for fieldwork and catch it without harming others. But to his surprise, Yuri saw parasites crawling out of the mantis's body. He feared that these parasites would take over his body if he stayed, so he fled, leaving the mantis behind. He estimated that he was already approaching the place marked with a cross. And finally, he came across a cave that was supposed to be that place. He decided to make a staff with earth magic and used boar skin to turn it into a torch. Inside, he found traces of human labor, but there seemed to be no resources here. He thought that there might be something else ahead in the cave. So he went further, and eventually his step became a little uncertain. He understands that he has no choice and later must find a city to trade goods. He dreamed that if there were some real treasure, it would be easier for him. Then Yuri came across a shiny stone, illuminated by light pouring from a giant stalactite. This landscape was a real treasure for him. He took it home, put it in the pantry, and discovered that it was exactly the salt he needed. And now, when he can eat meat fried with salt, Yuri's life changed and his measured life became better. However, now he began to doubt whether he had really lived slowly before, and it seems as if he is forgetting something important. He realized that it was about the most important part of slow life, namely agriculture. He prepared tools for working in the field, and for the first task he needed to plow the field. He used earth magic to remove unwanted weeds. Then he cultivated the soil to prepare it well for sowing seeds. Yuri realized that he had already made a hoe for working in the field, but in the end did not use it and decided to cultivate only one furrow by hand. After that, he finished preparing the field. Then he needed manure, fertilizer from cows, horses, or birds. But in this area there was none, and he wondered what to do next. Then the same birds appeared and asked him what he was doing. Yuri had an idea, and he continued to watch them closely. While the birds looked as if they did not understand him, Yuri thought that if they helped him take manure from their group, it would make the task easier. But he could not just ask them to come here and defecate for him. The birds asked him what happened, and he replied that he was just thinking about something. But, on second thought, he had not introduced himself to them yet. So Yuri introduced himself and asked their names, and the birds asked him what their names were. To this, Yuri replied that these were just names. Everyone has their own. The birds did not know what giving names was, so Yuri simply told them this. Call him Yuri from now on. He was glad to have someone to talk to, and since he found himself in this world, he still had not met a single person. But this did not bother him, because people would have been annoying anyway. And now he began to prepare fertilizer. The birds asked him what he was doing. To this, he replied that he was gathering weeds to make fertilizer from them. Now he took out a pot in which he collected ash from plants, which he had. They were useful because they contained nutrients needed for the fields. He scattered the ash all over the field, and it reminded him of a story about an old man who makes flowers bloom on withered trees. When he finished the preparation, Yuri wondered what to grow first, since he could choose wheat, potatoes, and finally, sweet potato, which he found earlier. He somehow does not want to eat it, so he thinks about whether to bury it for now. Next, he wanted to learn about the seasons in this world, and since the goddess said she chose a world with a similar climate, it should be summer here now. So he tried to plant some wheat, but when he scattered the seeds across the field, the birds thought that Yuri was giving them more food. Yuri said it was not for food because he wanted to grow a crop from these seeds. The birds actually do not understand what farming is, so we had to explain everything to them. When he asked for a little help, they instead pulled out some weeds. Later, Yuri planted various crops. The crops he planted sprouted quite quickly thanks to the magic of the trees. He made sure to water them with water magic. When the weather was bad, he used light magic for photosynthesis, and when the sun was too bright, he applied dark magic to create shade for the plants. Yuri had to farm for the first time, but thanks to the spells he begged from the goddess, everything went smoothly. After 2 months, the inhabitants of Ury had developed quite well, and he was now enjoying life thanks to all the hard work he had put in so far. Over time, he rebuilt the walls well, so now there was no need to worry about monster attacks or ruined fields, and the feeling of confinement disappeared, so he could relax peacefully. He also befriended the birds who often visited him, and named them Sakura and Omochi. When they bring friends, it gets noisy, but they do not stay long in this forest because, therefore, the birds need to fly over the sea before it gets cold in winter, and they set off to find warmer lands. Yuri feels that he might miss them. He thought he wanted to live alone, but now he feels lonely. So Sakura and Omochi came to Yuri to inform him that something unpleasant had happened. Yuri asked what happened, and if they were attacked by monsters, but they replied that they saw a small person fainted on the ground in the forest, and Yuri became worried, and quickly went out to check because this forest is dangerous for small children. When they were led to the place where the baby was seen earlier, Yuri wondered why the child was so deep in the forest and thought that maybe some traveler lost their child. He hoped that they did not just abandon the child here. Yuri continued to follow the birds. When he approached the tree where they saw the child, Yuri saw no one, so he called out so that the child would know he was there to help and could come out if hiding. However, there was no answer, so they probably went somewhere. The birds asked him to look carefully down the tree trunk, and when he did, he noticed that there really was something there. Yuri was surprised when he realized that the small person the birds saw was actually a fairy. He saw a fairy for the first time, and, like in fairy tales, she softly glows and is beautiful. But now is not the time to admire her because she fainted and he needs to act. Yuri was relieved that she seemed neither injured nor sick, but she probably was running out of mana, so he decided to use the mana restoration potion he received from the goddess. But he had to be careful because she had a very small mouth, and giving her the potion was difficult. Yuri tried to move as slowly and carefully as possible, but he sneezed and spilled all the potion on her, scared because the fairy was now drowning in the potion that was supposed to save her. But it turned out that he didn't need to worry, because the fairy woke up and she was fine. She was very angry because she thought he had done something to her, and Yuri felt guilty for no reason. He explained the whole situation to her. The fairy said that he should consider it an honor to have the opportunity to help her and talk to her. Yuri noted that she might be small, but with a big character. She explained that spirits usually do not communicate with people, and then Yuri learned that she was actually a spirit, although he did not know what the difference was. She introduced herself as the spirit of alcohol and, as the name suggests, draws her powers from it. Yuri asked her name. She replied that spirits do not have such, and the birds laughed because even spirits, like them, do not have names. This angered the spirit, and Yuri remarked that she probably feels uncomfortable living without a name. The spirit replied that they hardly communicate with people, so it is not a problem for them, and among themselves they have unique abilities that help recognize each other. Although now, when she thinks about a person like Yuri, it would really help her to have a name. She told him that he could call her whatever he wanted, and Yuri felt déjà vu because she basically confirmed his words that she needed a name. He looked at her supportively, and she asked if he would not leave the one whose spirit had just been broken. When she was convinced that he would not leave her like that, she decided to rely on him for some time until she gained more strength, although it seemed more like her strength was putting her in Yuri's place. Yuri took her back to the village, and she was surprised to see that he lived in such a big house. Yuri decided not to say anything. Then the spirit noticed that the village seemed to be one of the abandoned ones. She asked if that meant his family had settled in the abandoned village, to which he replied, no, he was alone most of the time. Sometimes birds flew in and he was not so lonely. Spirit was saddened for him because in her eyes he was just a child living alone in an abandoned village in the forest. It seemed hard for him, and Yuri did not understand why that spirit looked at him with such pity. Then she asked him if there was only one child in this village and if there could be no alcohol here at all, and Yuri nodded. The spirit of alcohol fell into despair because she hoped to find liquor in this village, and asked if there really was not a single barrel of sake here, and Yuri confirmed that there were none. He searched every corner of this abandoned village. There was no trace of what Sokka had created here. The spirit explained to him how she should live now, because she needs Sokka to survive. Otherwise, she will simply starve to death. Yuri can do nothing, even if she says so. Then he asked her if it was possible to manage with potions, because earlier potions had saved her. Spirit replied that she can indeed draw life force not only from alcohol, but it is simply not tasty, and her taste receptors continue to lose sensitivity until she has alcohol. So Yuri told her that if she really wants to live here, she will have to make sacrifices, because he even shares his valuable potions willingly. She understood what he was talking about, and Yuri thought she would decide to leave this place. Now that she apparently does not want to leave, he decided to take care of her for a while. But this creates a problem with her food because he only has 2 magic pills left and needs to keep them handy for himself. So he came up with a plan and decided to try it. Later Spirit was dreaming on the tree. Yuri gathered many herbs to now try making potions. He also prepared bottles infused with the magic of the earth for storing potions, but so far he had nothing to make sake from. So he needed information on how to make potions because he had never done it before. Therefore, he checked in the skill guide what he knew about it. He was looking for ways to create potions. And it really worked, giving him results that described methods of preparing various potions and antidotes. Yuri read that all common potions, ordinary herbs provide recovery and simple effects, and advanced versions need to be made from higher-level materials and skills. Fortunately, he had some materials for potions, so he decided to take a risk and started preparing them, and made all the potions he could. He thought he had made a bit too many, but that means the spirit would not be hungry for some time. However, it helped him because he acquired alchemy skills while creating many potions. This confirmed to him that he could still develop and perhaps be able to do even more than the abilities given by God at that moment. The spirit saw all those bottles and asked if he was lacking potions, and he replied that he had just made them for her. She had never heard of a child being able to make potions, however, Yuri asked her to try them for now. The spirit hesitated, but she slowly took a sip and said to him, "It tastes bad." Yuri could do nothing because he only knew how to make simple potion recipes so far. She added that this potion was better than all the ones she had so far. He heard this and rejoiced. And then she went for a walk and, without saying much, behaved like a tsundere. Yuri looked at the bottle with the potion and was glad that she was able to drink it. But he wondered how this potion differed from the ordinary one. Meanwhile, the spirit had been thinking for some time. That boy is not ordinary, and differs from all the people she had seen before. Even without alcohol, she thought that she could stay here a little. Since then, 2 weeks have passed, and the season has almost reached the peak of summer. Working in the field at such temperatures could be life-threatening, but it did not harm our boy, because he could simply use dark magic to create shade, water magic for moisturizing, and finally wind magic to cool down. The spirit noticed that his magic was truly abnormal because she had never seen anyone spend so much magic, and on agriculture at that. And Yuri said that it was better for him to do everything he could, because he still had a lot of magic with which he could handle any tasks. The spirit did not want to be outside, so she went back to nap. And Yuri did not object because he did not expect her to work much, since now she was more of a neighbor to him. Fortunately, with her arrival, almost nothing changed in his life, and for him, her character was a true blessing. Now he looked at the sky and felt that it would be very hot for several days, so he might need light clothing for the heat. He decided to go to the forest to look for useful materials. When he went out, Yuri remembered that there were many different plants in this forest, and, even by looking closely at the weeds, one could find useful things. Later, he found several perennial wild herbs, the stems of which could be used as a source of fibers. And since there were many of them, Yuri decided to stock up on them to later make clothes from them. After that, he went a little further and found an even more interesting thing, cotton, but his joy turned into disappointment. When he also saw a swarm of mosquitoes, Yuri did not want to go through it, and now, when he thinks about it, Yuri remembered that until then he had been focused only on magical creatures and could have missed the most dangerous one. Mosquitoes are known for taking the most human lives on Earth, transmitting disease pathogens during bites. Yuri knows that there could be many more insects here, so it was reckless not to come up with anything for them. He also understands that there could be pathogens and viruses here that do not exist on Earth, and therefore he would not be able to treat himself if he got sick. And when Yuri realized this, he felt strong anxiety and fear. So he quickly ran away, postponing the closure plan and focused on buying repellent. He activated evaluation to find plants from which insect repellents could be made. It took him several hours to find plants with insecticidal components, and in old Japan they made smoke against mosquitoes from this. However, for making pesticides, he would have to keep the flowers for 6 months, which is too long, and winter is coming soon. He pondered the possibility of another good idea, and then, after thinking a little, out of desperation, he decided to use an extreme method. He set fire to several such plants in the house. The smoke spread throughout the dwelling and was supposed to protect it from insects. At that moment, he saw something fly out of the house at rocket speed, and it turned out to be a spirit. She almost suffocated inside and scolded him for treating her like a pest. Yuri apologized to her because he did not think she would be inside. Then she noticed that it was strange that he started fighting pests only in the summer. She also knew that pests could be deadly to people, and the worst could suck all the magic out of him, which could also lead to death. In that case, Yuri asked her, if you teach him something again that he did not know, she does not mind helping him a little. Although she would help him more if he prepared some alcohol for her. Yuri immediately refused because he still had a lot of work now. She told him that she really wanted alcohol but regretted that there was no child who could make it, and Yuri asked why she could not make alcohol. Although she is the spirit of alcohol, she still has not been named. Today marks 2 months since she settled, and Yuri came up with several names for her, but she immediately rejected them. It happened because she did not like them. Eventually, he began to call her Hey. She called him You, and everything returned to the beginning. Finally, it was harvest time, and Yuri was eagerly waiting for this day. He thought that from such an amount of wheat he could bake bread and udon for himself. But before going to the field, the spirit told him to wait and said they should arrange a competition to see who harvests this crop first, and if she wins, he will brew beer from this barley. Yuri found this completely one-sided, so he asked what would happen if he won. She said she would do everything he said, although he had nothing to ask. Suddenly, one idea came to his mind, and he asked her never to talk to him about alcohol again if he won. She called him heartless for agreeing to such a condition, but since she just needed not to lose, she took on the challenge. They stood with sickles on neighboring sides of the field, and so the competition of barley mowing began. Yuri tried to mow the wheat correctly and quickly, thinking that her small body would hinder her. But everything was quite different when he saw that she was actually quite fast. She is driven by a craving for beer and says she can no longer imagine life without alcohol, because it is the source of her life force, and she is ready to do anything for it. Yuri realized that he had underestimated her a bit due to the usual lack of motivation. But if she wins, he would have to redirect important food supplies to alcohol production, so there was nothing to be done, and he decided to act decisively, while the spirit thought that she had already finished one row and therefore could finish the rest faster. But she was shocked when she found out that Yuri could use wind magic to weeds immediately. She realized that from the very beginning it was a challenge she could not win. Yuri was not very happy because he wanted to slowly enjoy the atmosphere, but had to take desperate measures. Now that he had won, he asked her to fulfill the promise. The spirit was offended because she never suspected that he was capable of such a thing. She told him that he just liked to mock her. Then Yuri reminded her that it was she who decided to challenge him. He told her again that he did not have much food, and she seemed to handle the potions quite well. So he asked her to be a more attentive guest, and the spirit told him that was enough. She apologized to him for selfishness, asked to just forget everything she said, and left just like that. Yuri felt a little guilty because he thought it was his fault. It was one of the reasons why he preferred to be alone, and besides, he thought she would return when she got hungry. But even when dawn came, she still had not returned home, and he was worried that she might have left forever. He just hoped that no monster would attack her. Even if that were the case, he cared, and Yuri could not deny that he was worried about her. So he took a machete and went to look for her in the forest. Meanwhile, the entity wandered through the forest and did not know what to do next. Now that she had escaped, she could not return to Yuri, and there seemed to be no other villages nearby. She also did not want to return to the city where she had been before, so she decided for now to just find a safe place to spend the night on the way. On the way, she found some raspberries, and they turned out to be quite good quality. Raspberries are valued for their sweetness and refreshing tartness, so they are perfect for making wine. She remembered that Yuri also wanted to grow fruit. Therefore, it would be best for her to tell him about this place. But she would not shamelessly return to him unless he himself came and asked her to return. But it seems he will not do that. Then she hears some sounds behind her, making her wonder if Yuri was really following her. She said that she was still dissatisfied. But then she realized that it was not Yuri, but a wild boar. She got scared and ran away from there, finding herself in a quieter place. Even here, a monster snake attacked her. Then a bird attacked her in the sky. Dangers constantly pursued her, and she does not understand what is wrong with this forest, because there are monsters everywhere and it is impossible to get out. She began to think that she should not have left Yuri, but then she heard sounds in the bushes that could have been more monsters. But this time it was Yuri himself who came to look for her with the help of birds. He was glad that she was safe and asked her to return home. The spirit began to cry, and despite being cheerful, she agreed to go because he asked so. Later, when they returned home, she asked him why he was looking for her. Yuri replied that he could not leave her alone, and that he was partly to blame for her escape. He said that he behaves immaturely for his age and apologized for his action, and she replied that now he behaves childishly. In fact, she also regretted that she was selfish then, and decided not to mention alcohol anymore, as she had promised. Then Yuri replied that he actually plans to expand the fields, so he does not know when yet. But when he does, and the right time comes, he will be able to try making alcohol, she asked. Why suddenly? And he said that he remembered how he once wanted to get rid of the pain of life with medicine and be able to eat what he loves. So now he is looking forward to working together with her and began calling her Marcia, a new name he invented. She asked him if that was supposed to be her name, and Yuri said that in his hometown that was the name of the goddess of alcohol. He did not want to insist if she did not like it, but she really liked the name. She accepted it and thanked him for inventing it. Meanwhile, in the village at the edge of the forest, about 10 kilometers from Yuri's village, the villagers were doing everything possible to repel a large bear monster, because if they let it into the village, it would mean the end for them. The bear was stunned by the dozens of people defending the village, and it was driven back into the forest. The one who led the villagers was glad that the bear fled, and it was a miracle that none of them were harmed by that animal. One of the peasants asked the leader if they would not chase that bear. He replied that it was not worth going too deep into the forest, especially since there were many dangers there. People avoided approaching the forest because it had become home to powerful monsters. Even one village was abandoned because no one could live there anymore. But our guy Yuri did not know that his home was actually located in the middle of the demon kingdom, and when Marcia told him about the raspberry, he decided to go look for it tomorrow. He did not know that a powerful monster was approaching his village. The next day Yuri was glad he went and gathered those raspberries. They were really tasty. He had long wanted such sweetness, and now wanted to grow it in the fields. Marcia asked not to eat it all because it was a rare find for later making a drink. He told her not to worry because he could not eat that much, but he doubted whether she could really make alcohol from just that berry. She explained that usually sugar is added to fruits and they are allowed to ferment. But this raspberry already had a lot of sugar, so it should work with simple processing. She told Yuri how to crush the washed fruits, then put them in a clean jar and leave to ferment in a well-ventilated dark place for several months, stirring once a day. And Yuri asked her if she was sure that nothing else needed to be done. She replied after doing everything that after all this, everything depends on luck. If the necessary bacteria are present, alcohol will form. Otherwise, everything will spoil. Yuri could not check the bacteria even with analysis, so he had to rely on chance. He repeated the process she advised and stirred the raspberries daily, and let them ferment again. In the corner of the house, Marcia could not wait to drink because she had not drunk for a long time. Yuri thought she looked like an elementary school student and remembered what had interested him. He asked Marcia why she was unconscious in the forest when he first found her, because if she was the spirit of alcohol, she should be in a safe brewery, and he assumed she was kicked out of there. Hearing this, she fell silent for a moment, then looked at Yuri with a sharp gaze and placed her hands on his cheeks. She thanked him for asking and asked him to listen to her story, because she had been through a lot, saying that she had lived for many years at a large city-sake brewery, and the old brewery master was a good person who understood sake well. The sake made by the old man was of good quality thanks to the blessing of the spirit, and people brought sake to the spirits as payment, so they have helped each other since ancient times. After the old man died, his son took over the sake brewery, and this became the worst turn of fate, because he began to put profit above all else, economizing on materials and labor, which caused the quality of the sake to fall. But he did not care, because he knew people would continue to buy it due to the reputation of generations. That man even tried to destroy her, considering her a pest stealing their sock, and hired a mage who hunts spirits, so she eventually left there. Other spirits already lived in the neighboring breweries, so she set out to find new land. Eventually she wandered, got lost in the forest, and fainted. Yuri felt sorry for her, and such people would not understand Marcia's gaze. Marcia could not argue with anyone because people do not hear her voice. Most people see spirits only as glowing orbs flying around, and she reminded him that they rarely communicate with people because almost no one can understand them. That is why Yuri was so valuable. He wondered why he saw her so clearly, and she replied that it was due to the quality of magic or compatibility. She also said that Yuri's potion was easier to drink than others, so his magic was truly strong, and Yuri did not even know he was special. She hoped that he would also be able to make quality alcohol. Good, but in a month, they discovered that the alcohol had spoiled, and Marcia thought it was all over for her. But Yuri advised her to pull herself together and cheer up, because they could simply try again. Since autumn is already beginning to be felt, they will be able to find more fruit together. Yuri decided that if there was no fruit harvest, Marcia would not endure it any longer. Then he heard some sounds from behind the wall, but it did not sound like scratching on the wall. He thought that something might have gotten stuck in the pit he dug for protection, and in that case, he needed to check and stock up on meat. But to his surprise, he found a huge bear eating a wild boar caught in his trap. He realized that with the arrival of autumn, not only people prepare for winter, but animals do too, so that monster must prepare as well. Yuri now stood opposite the monster. They are bigger and fiercer than those he had encountered before. It seemed the bear even pulled the wild boar out of the pit. He remembered that when meeting a bear, one should not panic, must look it in the eyes and slowly back away. Yuri also could not just return home, so he decided to go outside to lead the bear away from his house. When the bear started chasing him, he went around the trap and stood there, hoping the bear would fall for it. Because of the bear's massive body, Yuri planned to finish it off right there to sleep peacefully at night. However, the bear managed to run around to the side of the trap, and this caught Yuri by surprise. He did not expect the bear to be so smart. The bear lunged at him again with its fangs. Yuri decided to use a magic and make another trap. This time he managed to catch the bear, but the bear surprised him, jumped out of the pit and charged at him. Yuri kept calm and used earth magic to catch the bear in the air, so it was a perfect opportunity to capture it. Then Yuri slowly filled the enclosed space with water. He felt sorry that he had to act this way. He prayed for the bear because he was forced to kill it, and in return promised to use its materials wisely. He then used an assessment to check how useful the bear monster was, and thought that since he managed to handle it, the bear must be weak, which means the locals are used to such monsters. He put the bear in storage to dissect it later, but now he has to find something today for Marcia. He walked through the forest himself and found various fruits. When he showed them to Marcia, she was completely exhausted, and said she realized that this world was empty, and that she was completely drained. Then he showed her a fruit that ripens and produces alcohol that can be used instead of sake. She told him that it was not that, took the fruit, and ate it. According to her, they needed a drink touched by humans. But while she was saying this, eventually she liked the fruit and asked if there were more. Yuri decided to leave her alone for now because she seemed to have cheered up a bit. Besides, the sun sets earlier, and it gets colder, so winter is coming soon. So they need to start preparing for the cold to make winter comfortable. Now he told Marcia that they needed to prepare 4 main things: hearing equipment, food supplies, clothing, and bedding. Then he asked her how they heat their town. She replied with a fireplace, and Yuri had an idea how to do it. He imagined a fireplace, but it would only warm a small part, and in other corners of the house it would still be cold, and he could not spend more firewood on such inefficient heat. So Marcia asked him what they would do next. He thought about it. He remembered that he had become very skilled in earth magic, so he could try something, and Marcia did not suspect what he would do next. After a few hours, Yuri finally made a floor heating system from the kitchen stove. She asked him what it was, and he advised her to touch the floor a little. When she did, Marcia felt that the floor was warm. Yuri explained that he installed the stove below floor level so that the heat would pass under it and warm the floor. Before that, he released heat and smoke upwards, so now he could use that smoke to warm the house. But while he was explaining this, Marcia was not listening at all because she had settled on the warm floor and only wanted to sleep. Yuri decided to just let Marcia sleep, and meanwhile he would go out and gather other crops. He thought it was time to harvest potatoes and began pulling out tubers one by one. He was impressed by their rich quality and wondered why people had abandoned this village at all, not suspecting that he himself lived in a place more dangerous than all the others. And then he noticed unusual leaves in the field and could not understand what it was until he pulled out the plant, and it turned out to be mandrake. Yuri forgot that he had also planted it earlier, so when he pulled it out, he pulled harder. Years later, Yuri noticed that even more of such had grown along the entire row. He didn't even know what to do with these mandragoras. He used his appraisal skill and found out that they could be used as an ingredient for medicine, and such a quantity would be enough for a pharmacy, so it was better to keep them just in case. He eventually gathered a lot of sweet potatoes and also obtained wheat, meat, and fruits, and that would be enough for him until spring. Now only clothing and bedding remained to be taken care of. Wild boar fur is not suitable for clothing. Bear fur might be suitable, although turning it into yarn would be a bit troublesome. From it, one could knit a sweater or something similar. As for clothing, he had other materials, so the last problem was bedding. Using bear hide was not possible because it would be hard and uncomfortable to sleep on. Yuri thought it would be good to sew sacks from plant fibers and a bit of cotton, but he did not find that amount of cotton at that time. Omochi flew up, greeted Yuri, and said that Sakura would come later, and Yuri noticed that Omochi was a bit plumper than usual. Maybe he was giving them too much food, and because of that, they might have become slower in front of predators. Omochi said that they were simply growing winter fur. It was a natural process. Yuri thought that might be true, and envied them because he would also like to have feathers for winter. Omochi asked him what he wanted. He said that he needed many wings, so if possible, he would like to know where to gather them. Omochi told him about another species of ruka birds nesting nearby, and suddenly they heard Sakura's cry for help. When Yuri looked out the window, he saw a large bird attacking Sakura with wings about 10 meters long, and Omochi told him that it was a ruka and that they were now attacking Sakura. Yuri thought that if something similar attacked them, the house and fields would be destroyed, and most importantly, he would not allow this creature to eat his friends, so Yuri attacked the ruka with a wind cutter, but it deflected the attack by enveloping itself in wind magic. Then he saw how the noise announced that the human body below was also their prey, and Yuri realized that they could unite and attack in groups. So he needed to quickly prepare for a counterattack. He decided to start by attacking the fastest one to break their formation. He honed his magic every day for this very moment. He shot a beam of light at the beast and, as expected, it opened a breach. Then he used dark magic to confuse the Ruka group and deprive them of their sanity. Now he can buy some time to focus and make his final move. A huge sphere of water to drown those birds right in the air and finish them off. Later, when Marcia found out he was catching Ruka birds, she was surprised by his achievement, and Yuri felt guilty for constantly strangling opponents. He needed to find a way to defeat them without causing them more suffering. Marcia wonders about this guy. It was unclear if he wanted to survive here, but Yuri dismissed that and said that now they have all the materials to make a bed and clothes.